This is Glenn Kirschner. He's a prosecutor, he has a law degree, and he is loco. He's going to weigh in on the Kyle Rittenhouse situation here and get nothing right. What really disturbs me the most about this dude, he doesn't even seem to understand the basic underpinnings of our legal system, and that is presumption of innocence. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dredd to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnny Walker Dredd Show.
I haven't done a Loco lawyer video in quite a while, and so I came across this one on this other idiot's channel. His name is Coltard or something like that. And he thinks this guy is just the most incredible legal mind of all. Until you listen to him, then you start to realize, holy cow, how many innocent people are in prison on account of him? Well, let's see him talk.
So let's talk about this new ruling by the Wisconsin judge presiding over the Kyle Rittenhouse murder case. The judge ruled that the prosecutors cannot refer to the two people Rittenhouse killed and the one he shot who survived, cannot refer to those people as victims.
By the way, if you're wondering, yes, I've already kind of covered this on another video where I responded to Coltard's video itself, but I figured this is a really good Loco lawyer moment, and so why not spin this thing off on its own? And so let's go ahead and start. He's all pissed off because Judge Schroeder wouldn't allow the victims, as we call them, of Kyle Rittenhouse to be called victims. Well, now that Kyle Rittenhouse has been acquitted, who's the victim? It seems to me that Kyle, after getting hit in the back of the head by a skateboard, is a victim. What about being chased and ambushed? Is that not a victim? But he wouldn't say that, even though Kyle was acquitted. So you see why Judge Schroeder didn't want Huber and Grosskreutz and Rosenbaum called victims, because the jury hadn't decided yet whether Kyle was guilty. We'll move on.
But the judge also ruled that Rittenhouse's defense attorneys can refer to those human beings as rioters, looters, and arsonists.
Actually, he didn't say that. He said that if the defense can prove that they were, in fact, arsonists, looters, and rioters, they might be able to. But let's not let those little details get in the way of a good narrative.
He's crazy, man.
Let's talk about that. Because treating everyone in a case fairly, victims and defendant alike, like justice, matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirschner here. So you've probably seen by now the horrific ruling handed down by the Wisconsin judge presiding over the Kyle Rittenhouse murder case. Here's how NBC News reported it. Headline: Men shot by Rittenhouse can't be called victims during trial, but rioters, looters are okay, judge rules.
And the headline is wrong. And how many times on my show have I told you that headline writers, who are typically copy editors, have rarely ever gotten anything right about the Kenosha shootings? There's a reason for that. Number one, copy editors have to make the headline sound exciting. It's clickbait. They want people to click on and read the story. This goes back to the early days of journalism, where headlines were designed to stoke fears, stoke anger, stoke excitement. Again, the person writing the story is typically not writing a headline. Instead, it's the copy editor, and they have a vested interest in selling newspapers and getting high click rates. So they're not particularly interested in telling the truth. And in this case here, the nuances of Judge Schroeder's rulings can't be conveyed in a headline. The nuance is that there have to be certain standards met before the defense can call these people victims and rioters, looters, and such. So The copy editor shortened it down and everybody got it wrong. You have to read the story. Don't go by headlines. Headlines bad.
And here's how that article begins. The 3 men Kyle Rittenhouse shot during a protest against police brutality in Wisconsin can be labeled rioters, looters, or arsonists if the teenager's defense team has evidence to support the characterization.
Gee, that nuance is not exactly conveyed in the headline, is it? But people don't read the story. They just read the headlines.
But they shouldn't be called victims, the judge in his murder trial ruled this week. The decision was among the ground rules Kenosha County Judge Bruce Schroeder set Monday for the trial, which is expected to begin November 1st.
Oh, he takes his glasses off. He's getting serious.
Why is this a horrific ruling? Well, let me tell you, in murder cases, and for 22 of my 30-plus years as a prosecutor, I was a homicide prosecutor in
Oh my God, how many innocent people are in prison?
the courts of D.C. Typically, we would refer to the person who was killed as the decedent. That's a neutral term. The person is dead, is not here to testify. That person is the decedent. So I actually don't have a principled complaint if the judge says I have a standing policy that we don't use the term victim because it's really up to the jury to decide who is a victim and who isn't. But then for this judge to turn around and say, however, you can refer to the victims, the people who were shot and killed or who were shot and survived, as arsonists and looters and rioters. You can use all these derogatory, demeaning, dehumanizing terms to refer to the people who were killed and injured. You can use those terms in front of the jury over and over again. I guess, what, in the judge's mind, maybe those people needed a good killing?
Gee, I don't think the judge said that at all. In fact, you just read the article where it says that the defense can only call them those things once they prove that they are in fact arsonists and looters and such. And here you are completely forgetting that. The judge did not say it was okay that they could do it over and over and over again. Come on, dude, you're a lawyer. You know the devil's in the details. At this point, you're just pushing propaganda.
Yeah, I'm crazy. I'm the loco one.
And that's the message we're supposed to send to the jury by saying they're not victims, but they're arsonists and looters and rioters. That is not equal justice. That is a horrifically biased ruling, in my opinion, in my experience, that makes it look like the judge is trying to stack the deck in Rittenhouse's favor. That's the way it looks.
Yeah, to an idiot. I'm not an idiot, so I don't see it that way.
You know, you ever hear the rule, what's good for the goose is good for the gander? You know, that's not a legal principle, but
That's not a legal principle, then shut the hell up. It's not a legal principle at all. Nada. So why are you mentioning it? I thought you were a lawyer.
You are so loco, man.
I've seen judges apply that very principle in trials over and over and over again. You try to treat both parties fairly.
Just because you've seen other judges do it doesn't make it right. And I'll tell you what there, Mr. Kirschner, I will stack up just about any of those judges against Judge Bruce Schroeder's background and experience any day you like. I think he understands the rules of court procedure. He certainly seems to know more about it than you.
When I say both parties, both the defendant and the prosecutor, because the prosecutor represents the interests of the people, of the community, and not in a legal sense, but in an actual sense, represents the victims, both those who survived and those who are no longer here to speak for themselves.
Are you including Kyle Rittenhouse as one of those victims since he was attacked? Since he was ambushed, chased, hit in the head with a skateboard? Are you calling him a victim? Is he one of those that you're crying about here?
And I've seen judges want to be fair and even-handed, but a judge who says you can't call them victims, but you can use all these dehumanizing, derogatory terms, to refer to them? That's obscene. That is no kind of equal justice. And I know we're living in a post-irony world these days, it seems, but it probably also qualifies as irony. You know why? Because the Wisconsin law has a Crime Victims' Bill of Rights. It's section 950.04, and it lists a series of rights that crime victims have. You know what number 1 is on the Crime Victims' Bill of Rights in Wisconsin? The right of victims to be treated fairly and with dignity and with respect by public officials, employees, and agencies.
And I already destroyed this argument on one of my other videos. I'll link it in the description below. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. As Mark Richards says, we have to read the entire statute. We don't get to cherry pick certain sections of it that we find appealing. First of all, nothing there says that a judge has to allow victims to be called victims during a court proceeding in front of a jury. What we have here is an abstraction. It could apply to something like that, or it might not. But nowhere in this Bill of Rights does it say that victims of crimes, and by the way, be careful there, it says victims of crimes, which implies what? Oh yeah, that Kyle Rittenhouse committed a crime, which means that he's guilty. What happened to that presumption of innocence that we're supposed to provide the accused, huh? Did you think about that there, Mr. Kirschner?
That was Loco, but not in an entertaining way.
But let's get back on it here. If you read this, the abstraction in no way implies that the people that Kyle Rittenhouse shot get to be called victims during the actual trial, especially not in front of a jury. But there's also things that this dude did that are, in my opinion, underhanded. Right below here, it states the rights of witnesses, and the actual header of this is the rights of victims and witnesses. Wisconsin statute clearly distinguishes between victims and witnesses. He doesn't mention that because it doesn't support his crybaby analysis. And in fact, above this, it defines victims of crimes. Again, this implies that the accused is guilty. You call Gage Grosskreutz a victim in front of the jury's going to come away with the impression that Kyle Rittenhouse has committed a crime. But Kyle is claiming self-defense. Yes, in a lot of trials, when nobody knows who actually did the act, it may be okay to call the people who have died as victims because the accused is not admitting to doing the actual shooting. Here, if we label these people as victims of crimes, there can only be one person the finger points at, and that's Kyle Rittenhouse. Self-defense cases are special in this regard, but this dude can't figure that out because he has a two-dimensional brain. So if you want to hear something really loco, how about this one? He just got done telling us that Judge Bruce Schroeder's decision to not allow these people to be called victims was understandable. He said he didn't have a beef with that. But now he's saying that it violates their basic fundamental rights. Right number 1. Which is it? I can't believe that he can make this claim right after telling us that Judge Bruce Schroeder's decision was understandable. Makes no sense at all. But then again, he's loco.
Hey, I'm the most local person in here.
And Judge Schroeder just did the exact opposite. He arguably violated the first right of crime victims.
But you just got done telling us that you understood that and actually supported it. You're only pissed off that he didn't turn around and allow Gage and his buddies to be called rioters and looters. So which is it? What is your argument? You don't have one because you're loco. Finally, I want to mention one more thing. Even if what he says is true, and that the people that Kyle Rittenhouse shot have a right to be called a victim, it wouldn't matter because an appeals court would look at the probative versus prejudicial nature of that decision and say, you know, for the purposes of protecting the rights of the accused, Judge Bruce Schroeder's ruling is correct. An appeals court is not going to allow the accused rights to be trampled just so that witnesses can't have their feelings hurt. The rights of the accused are going to heavily outweigh the rights of witnesses to be called victims. There's no probative value whatsoever in allowing Gage Grosskreutz to be called a victim, but there's a very heavy prejudicial factor involved. The prejudicial outweighs the probative. The appeals court would side with Judge Bruce Schroeder every time.
Let's hope that he conducts the trial more fairly than he resolved the pretrial issues and rulings. Because justice matters. For the two people who Kyle Rittenhouse killed, based on a review of the available video and evidence, it sure looks like he killed them without justification, with no legal defense. For the two people he killed, for the person he shot who survived, justice matters.
Well, I don't know what videos he was looking at. Gee, it kind of looked to me like Kyle Rittenhouse was being chased by Jojo Rosenbaum. It looks to me like Kyle was ambushed and then he was chased by the others. Oh, Lordy. Let's talk a little bit about this fairness deal. I mentioned this in my other video. This man is Loco. Our legal system isn't designed to be fair to the prosecution. It doesn't work like that. It's not like you're refereeing a football game where you have to call things fairly on both sides. The accused is given certain protections that witnesses are not. I can't believe I have to tell him this stuff because I thought he would have learned this in Law 101. The very essence of the presumption of innocence weights the trial towards the benefit of the accused. That alone should tell you that it's not meant to be even Steven. The fact that you have to have all 12 jurors agree for a conviction is to the benefit of the defense. According to him, it should be just a majority. If 7 out of 12 agree to convict, then that's a conviction. Doesn't work like that. There are plenty of examples where the accused and the prosecution are not treated the same. For example, if the defendant mentions something to the prosecution that could help acquit the accused, the prosecution has to divulge that. However, the same doesn't go for anything that the defendant says to his own lawyers that might acquit him. In other words, attorney-client privilege also benefits the accused. The fact that witnesses can be forced to go take the stand on subpoena and the defendant cannot be forced to do that is also another perfect example where the accused is given more protection than witnesses. The idea somehow that not allowing Gage to be called a victim means that you also cannot allow him to be called an arsonist is pure malarkey. Anybody who has any experience in law knows that. So why does this guy want people like Gage to be called victims? It's because he wants the jury to hear that so that they will think the accused is guilty. It's called being prejudiced. He wants prejudicial evidence in front of the jury because he wants to convict. He's a prosecutor. He doesn't give a damn about the rights of the accused. This is why I say, I wonder how many innocent people are rotting in jail on account of people like him. He's loco and he's also dangerous. Like my video, subscribe to my channel.